People only notice the glue when the pieces come apart. That's what my therapist once told me, and at the time, I thought it sounded poetic. But now, years later, I understand she was describing my entire existence, silent, sticky, invisible. My name is Claire Whitmore. I'm 27 years old. I used to think loyalty was the highest virtue, that keeping the peace meant keeping the love. But I'm here to tell you what really happens when you build your life around being reliable. You become a background character in your own story. Growing up in the quiet suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina, I was the dependable one, the one who never needed reminding to do her homework, the one who made her bed every morning even before she hit double digits. I was the girl who always stayed home from the birthday party if Emily had a stomachache or if mom and dad were just too tired to manage the chaos of 2 kids at once. Emily, my younger sister by 3 years, was the burst of color to my grayscale life. She was charismatic, impulsive, dramatic, beautiful in the way that made strangers stop in grocery store aisles to comment. I don't say this with bitterness, at least not at the beginning. I adored her. She was the kind of person you wanted to orbit, and I happily took my position as her quiet moon, reflecting just enough light to keep her shining. Our parents loved us both, I think. But their version of love was loudest where it was easiest. Emily, with her violin recitals and spontaneous poetry readings at family dinners, drew the applause. I brought home straight A's, but no one clapped for consistency. And that was fine, at first. When I was 10, I remember skipping a class field trip to stay home and help Emily finish a diorama she'd procrastinated for a month. She won first place. At the awards ceremony, she thanked her teacher, her dog, and the universe. She forgot to mention me. I told myself that was okay, that it didn't matter who knew, I knew, and that should be enough. By the time I hit high school, the dynamic was cemented. I didn't date much. I didn't party. I tutored, volunteered, and edited the school paper. I stayed home to help Emily with her algebra even though I had AP exams of my own. Mom would smile at me after dinner and say, "You're such a good big sister," but the gratitude never stuck longer than a few minutes. Not when Emily cried over a breakup and the whole household adjusted its orbit to comfort her. Not when I got into UNC Chapel Hill on a full scholarship and the only celebration was a congratulations card from Aunt Janice, while the family threw Emily a sweet 16 that cost more than my first semester's tuition. But I kept giving. Because that's what good sisters do, right? I pursued event planning in college, a major that let me use my organizational obsession for something beautiful. I interned with luxury wedding planners, corporate event firms, even nonprofits that hosted fundraisers under twinkling chandeliers. I graduated summa cum laude and started my own boutique planning company with little more than a laptop, a Pinterest board, and a relentless work ethic. I called it Kismet and Company because I believed, foolishly, in fate. I was the girl who made dreams happen for other people. Meanwhile, Emily stumbled through 3 different majors before finally settling on psychology, mostly because, as she put it, I think therapy is basically just listening and I already give amazing advice. She leaned on me through every heartbreak, every lost credit hour, every panic attack before finals. I helped her revise essays at 2 a.m., found her tutors she never thanked, and once even drove 6 hours in a thunderstorm to help her move out of a bad roommate situation. And yet, at every family gathering, it was Emily everyone swarmed. "She's so resilient," Mom would gush. "She's got such a bright spirit," Dad would add. Meanwhile, I made sure the catering trays were full and the playlist didn't skip. There was one Thanksgiving that finally made the cracks visible. I'd brought a pecan tart I made from scratch, my own recipe, toasted pecans with bourbon caramel and sea salt. Emily arrived late with store-bought cookies, forgot her shoes at the door, and immediately launched into a story about a guy who ghosted her after 3 dates. Everyone laughed, leaned in, sipped their wine, and gave her all the attention she could want. No one even touched my tart. Later that night, I overheard Emily talking to our cousin Lisa, who was asking about my event business. Emily said, "Claire? Yeah, she's good at organizing stuff, but it's not, like, real creative work. She's kind of a logistics person, you know? not someone with vision. I remember standing there in the hallway, her words slicing through me like thin paper cuts, painful because they were small and true enough to stick. I said nothing. I never said anything. But that night, I didn't sleep. I tried to tell Mom once, over coffee during her book club's annual brunch. I said, I just feel like sometimes Emily takes a lot for granted. Mom smiled, not unkindly, but with that infuriating patience people reserve for things they don't intend to take seriously. That's just how she is, honey. She's a little scattered, but she loves you. You've always been the strong one. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say that being the strong one was not the same as not needing support. That being dependable didn't mean I didn't want to be seen. But instead, I nodded. Smiled. Helped clean up. In my mid-20s, I finally got my own apartment, a soft beige loft filled with eucalyptus candles and plants that only needed water once a week. I worked 7 days a week, booking weddings, conferences, and boutique retreats. I loved my clients. They saw me, at least. They trusted me. They paid me for the emotional labor my family had taken for granted. And still, Emily called almost every night. Usually crying. Usually about some friend who let her down, some job she hated, some professor who didn't get her. I listened. Every time. Then came the night that I got a call from Aunt Janice. She was organizing our parents' 30th anniversary and wanted to know if I could help with planning. I lit up. I had a million ideas already. I'm actually planning to give Emily the reins on this one, Janice said casually. She's really been trying to step up lately, and I think this would be a great way for her to show some initiative. I nearly dropped my phone. She doesn't plan events, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I do. Oh, I know, honey. But you're always doing everything. We want this to be about family, not work. You can help her if you want, but let her take the lead this time, okay? That was the moment I felt something shift inside me. A quiet revolt. A whisper that said, you are not obligated to be invisible. And still, I said nothing. But I watched. I waited. And, for the first time in my life, I started writing things down. They say that weddings bring people together, but no one tells you how they sharpen the edges of every hidden fault line beneath the surface. And when the announcement came, when my sister Emily called me with that breathless, euphoric gasp, telling me she had just said yes to the love of her life, it felt, for a flickering second, like something was finally falling into place. I remember I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by linen samples and half-finished proposals for a client's vineyard wedding, and the moment I heard her voice shake with joy, I dropped everything. I can't believe it, she said, her voice cracking through the speaker. Claire, it's really happening. I'm getting married. I could almost see her, eyes wide and glassy, her hands probably still trembling as she clutched whatever ring he had given her. I'd met Ryan twice by that point, once at a crowded 4th of July barbecue and once during a rushed lunch over sushi, where he'd spent more time checking his Apple Watch than engaging with either of us. But Emily glowed around him. She practically sparkled in his shadow. And when she asked, will you be my maid of honor? I mean, I couldn't imagine anyone else by my side. It hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. For a long beat, I said nothing, because I was stunned by the warmth blooming in my chest, like someone had finally drawn the curtains back and let the sun pour in. Of course I will, I whispered, because anything louder might have cracked the moment. I'd be honored. In the days that followed, I dove in with a kind of energy I didn't even know I had left. I cleared space on my work calendar. I created a new folder labeled Emily's Wedding and filled it with Pinterest boards, Excel sheets, mood boards, and budget projections. I bought a fresh notebook with copper foil lettering that read, "She said yes," and filled the first page with a vision outline, ceremony options, reception vibes, floral styles. I called in favors from vendors I trusted, people I had worked with in the industry who owed me more than a few kind gestures. Emily came over the next weekend with a bottle of Prosecco and an entire stack of bridal magazines. She collapsed on my couch like she always had, sprawled and dramatic, her feet instantly finding their way into my lap. "I knew you'd take this seriously," she said between gulps of bubbly. "You're the only person I trust not to let it become a mess." It wasn't just the compliment that hit me, it was the way she said trust. As if this time, my reliability wasn't a given, but a choice she saw and valued. That night, we stayed up until 2 a.m. laughing over wedding horror stories we'd read online and reminiscing about the makeshift backyard wedding we'd staged with our dolls as kids. She called me her calm in the chaos, and I tucked that phrase away like a keepsake, pulling it out whenever the stress of her wedding planning threatened to fray my patience. I attended every dress fitting, every venue walkthrough, and every vendor meeting, even the ones she scheduled at the last minute. I drove her to her manicure appointments, met with florists when she double-booked herself, and when she fought with Ryan over seating arrangements, I mediated without picking sides. She called me crying at least 3 times in 1 week, overwhelmed and hormonal, and I answered every time, even during meetings. My phone was never on silent. My availability was endless. It wasn't just about helping her, it was the sense of connection I was finally starting to feel. For once, our roles didn't feel so one-sided. We talked almost every night, and not just about centerpieces or invitation designs. We talked about Mom and Dad and how strange they'd been lately. About her fears that she wasn't doing marriage right. About my clients and the burnout I didn't want to admit. I started to think that maybe this wedding wasn't just her transition into a new life, it was our transformation too. Maybe we were finally meeting as equals. Maybe I was finally visible. I paid for her bridal shower decorations out of pocket when the venue misquoted the final invoice, because she was crying and overwhelmed and had already maxed out her card. I covered the tip for the makeup trial when she forgot her wallet, and I didn't mention it to anyone. I drove to her apartment at midnight the week of her engagement party because she was spiraling about a zit on her forehead and, how could anyone love a bride with acne? I held her while she sobbed, then made her tea, and rubbed her shoulders until she fell asleep on the couch. In those quiet moments, I felt closer to her than I had in years. And then came Sasha. Sasha was the type of person who walked into a room and made everyone feel like they were either her best friend or her competition, often both. She was Emily's roommate from her freshman year of college, the one who dropped out halfway through sophomore year to travel and soul search, but somehow always managed to land in glamorous photo ops. She was loud, irreverent, gorgeous in a curated Instagram way, and immediately decided that she would be heavily involved in the wedding. Her words, not mine. The first time I met her in the context of the wedding was at Emily's second dress fitting. She showed up late, wearing oversized sunglasses and a bright red coat even though it was 80 degrees out. She waved dramatically, air-kissed Emily on both cheeks, and turned to me with a syrupy smile. "You must be the famous sister," she said, like I was some fan she'd read about on a blog. "Emily never stops talking about how type A you are. So useful for weddings." I tried to smile. "I prefer organized," I said lightly. Sasha laughed like I'd told a joke. "Tomato, tomato," she said, already turning her attention to Emily, who was stepping onto the pedestal in her gown. From that moment on, Sasha was everywhere. She inserted herself into planning meetings without invitation. She made loud suggestions that clashed with the theme Emily and I had carefully curated. She joked that I was the wedding manager, while she was the vibes coordinator. She suggested changes to the color scheme because, honestly, blush tones are so last season. And every time I brought it up with Emily, she brushed it off. "She's just trying to help," Emily said one evening as we sipped rose on my balcony. "She doesn't mean to step on your toes. I just want everyone to feel included." I nodded slowly, biting back the words I wanted to scream. "She's not trying to help, she's trying to hijack." But I stayed quiet, because I didn't want to seem petty or territorial. This was Emily's day, not mine. And if she wanted Sasha around, then I would find a way to coexist. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself Emily and I were stronger than that. We had built something real in these months, hadn't we? One night, after a particularly long day of centerpiece shopping, Emily and I ended up back at my apartment, both of us barefoot and drained. We drank wine on the floor, too tired to sit on furniture, and she leaned her head on my shoulder. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she said softly. "I know I don't always say it, but you've been everything. This whole thing, it would have fallen apart without you." My throat tightened. I didn't respond right away, because my heart was too full. "You've always had me," I finally whispered. "You always will." We sat in silence after that, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. And in that moment, I believed we were okay. That maybe, just maybe, I was finally not just the glue, but the heart of something. Not just the organizer, but the sister who mattered. But things started to change again, subtle at first. Sasha started planning a surprise bachelorette trip, with just the girls, and conveniently forgot to loop me in. I found out about it 2 days before they left for Miami, when Emily texted, "Can you cover for me at the florist on Friday?" Sasha booked something last minute. I didn't even ask questions. I just said yes. The distance grew, invisible but undeniable. I'd show up to fittings and find out decisions had already been made without me. Emily was harder to reach, more scattered, more defensive when I gently reminded her about timelines and budgets. "Claire, not everything has to be so rigid," she snapped one day when I told her the caterer needed a final headcount. "It's a wedding, not a hostage negotiation." That night, I cried into my shower tiles for 20 minutes. Because it was happening again. I was being recast as the reliable one, the functional one, the background. And Sasha was becoming the star. But this time, I wasn't going to shrink quietly into that role. Not without a fight. There are moments in life that split your reality in half, before and after, trust and betrayal, love and humiliation, and mine arrived in the form of a 6-line text message sent at 10:48 p.m., exactly 48 hours before Emily was set to walk down the aisle in the dress I helped her pick, beneath the archway I had helped build, during a ceremony I had practically orchestrated. "Hey sis. Hope you're okay with a slight change. Sasha's stepping in as maid of honor. Love you." That was it. No phone call. No apology. No explanation. Just a soft pat on the head disguised as affection, a neatly wrapped betrayal flung at me like an afterthought, as if she were moving a centerpiece or swapping out a napkin color. I sat frozen on my living room couch, the glow of the message burning into my eyes, my fingers tightening around the stem of my wine glass until I was genuinely worried it might shatter. I blinked, reread the message twice, then again, thinking, hoping, maybe it's a joke or maybe she meant to send it to someone else. But no second message came. No follow-up. Just silence. The same silence I had filled for 30 years. At first, my mind struggled to even register what had just happened. My body was present, heart hammering, breath catching, but my mind floated above it all, disconnected, as if observing someone else's heartbreak from a distant window. I clicked the text open, checked the timestamp, scrolled back through our previous messages. The last one was 2 days ago, a photo of the veil she'd chosen, paired with a "I can't wait for you to see it," complete with heart emojis and exclamation points. What changed in 2 days? I called her immediately, and of course, it rang twice before going to voicemail. I tried again. No answer. I sent a text, tried to keep my composure. "Hey, just saw your message. Can we talk? I'm confused." I waited. Staring at my phone like it owed me a miracle. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then finally, "Don't stress. Everything's still happening. Just come and enjoy the day. We'll talk later. It's just been complicated. Complicated." As if replacing your sister with a woman who openly belittled her contributions and tried to redesign your entire wedding with zero regard for planning logistics was just a minor reshuffle. As if stripping me of the one role that had made me feel visible in our relationship wasn't a complete erasure of everything I had poured into the last 9 months. I felt nauseous. I opened the wedding itinerary, the one I had built from scratch, the timeline, the call sheets, the vendor coordination, the emergency contact protocols, the entire structure that held her wedding together like scaffolding. I scrolled down, my eyes darting to the bottom where I had included my name as the event coordinator and maid of honor, only to find both roles now labeled simply as bridal team, coordinated by Sasha Bloom. I blinked, and the document felt like it was mocking me. I opened the shared Google Drive we had used since the beginning. Every document was still intact. Every folder bore my fingerprints: venue research, cake tasting notes, playlist spreadsheets, seating charts, yet my name had been quietly, surgically erased. Sasha had simply duplicated the files, replaced the credits, and moved on. My effort had been rebranded under someone else's name like it was a logo being swapped out on a pre-made template. I sat in the dark for hours, unable to sleep, too stunned to cry, just staring at the life I had built for someone else being redressed like a mannequin and displayed without me. By the time morning came, I was still awake, my laptop open beside me, my eyes red and dry. I called her again. No answer. I sent another text. Emily, please. I just need to understand. What happened? This time, there was no reply at all. When I finally gathered the strength to speak to my parents, it was already Saturday afternoon, the day before the wedding. I called from my car, still parked in front of my apartment, not ready to move, not sure where I would even go. My mother answered, her voice warm and excited. Oh, sweetheart. We were just talking about you. Your father says you should wear your blue earrings tomorrow, the ones you wore to his retirement dinner. So elegant. I took a long breath, closed my eyes, and spoke slowly. Mom, did Emily tell you I'm no longer the maid of honor? There was a pause, just long enough to signal that she knew something. She mentioned there was a bit of a change, my mother said cautiously, like she was choosing her words from a minefield. But she said you'd still be part of the ceremony, just in a slightly different capacity. Slightly different? My voice cracked, disbelief bleeding through every syllable. She removed me. She replaced me with Sasha. And she didn't even call to tell me, just a 6-line text. Another silence. Then, gently, Claire, it's her wedding. Sometimes decisions get complicated near the end. Emotions are high. Don't make this about you. Don't make this about me. I could have screamed. I could have thrown my phone through the windshield. Instead, I gripped the steering wheel and said nothing, because how could I explain to someone who had always viewed me as self-sufficient that this moment, was not about ego or spotlight, but about decades of being quietly useful and never, ever chosen? Claire, my father's voice came on the line, more grounded but no less dismissive. It's one day. Just show up. Take the high road. Don't give people a reason to talk. I wanted to laugh. Take the high road, as if I hadn't spent a lifetime paving it for other people to walk on while they trampled me on their way up the mountain. I told them I needed time. That I wasn't sure if I'd come at all. My mother sighed. Well, you'd be missed, she said, but it didn't feel like a plea. It felt like an obligation. I hung up and sat in that car for a very long time, the world blurring past the windshield, my mind flipping through memories like index cards, each one edged with sacrifice. I remembered staying up all night sewing patches on Emily's Girl Scout vest because she'd forgotten until the last minute. I remembered sitting in the front row at every recital, clapping louder than anyone else, even when she botched the notes. I remembered loaning her rent money after she flunked out of college the first time, never asking for it back. I remembered carrying her through every heartbreak, through every failure, through every crisis, without ever asking for thanks. I remembered her saying, I couldn't imagine anyone else by my side. And now, I was not only not by her side, I had been erased from the picture entirely. That night, I poured myself a glass of whiskey, not wine. I put on the old hoodie I wore when I was sick or heartbroken or too tired to pretend. I sat on the floor of my living room and stared at the dress I was supposed to wear, the dusty mauve gown we'd picked together, tailored to fit me perfectly, now relegated to some side corner of the bridal party where I would smile politely while watching another woman stand where I was supposed to be. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat there, hollow and exhausted, the weight of a lifetime's worth of self-abandonment finally coming home to roost. And then I did cry. Not because of the wedding, not because of Sasha, not even because of Emily, but because I had let it happen. Because I had trained everyone in my life to believe that I would always take the high road, always be the bigger person, always show up smiling no matter how many times I was overlooked or cast aside. I cried for the little girl who once skipped her own birthday party to help her sister finish a science project. I cried for the teenager who had her college acceptance overlooked for a boy Emily dated for 2 weeks. I cried for the woman who built an entire career helping other people celebrate their milestones, while quietly waiting for someone to celebrate her. And then, sometime around 3 a.m., I stopped crying. Because something had shifted. Something subtle but permanent. I was done. Not with love, not with family, but with invisibility. Weddings are meant to be mirrors of love, reflections of commitment, of family, of trust. But standing outside the tented reception, hidden in the shadow between 2 lattice fences, I couldn't feel any of those things. All I could feel was the tight grip of my own hands, clenched around the soft satin clutch that matched a dress I no longer recognized. I had arrived late on purpose. I had slipped into the ceremony unnoticed, my seat conveniently placed near the back row, close to the aisle, probably Sasha's doing. Even the usher had looked puzzled when he saw me. "I think you were supposed to be up front," he'd said, half-heartedly gesturing toward the reserved seating. "I'm fine here," I'd answered, my voice so flat I almost didn't recognize it myself. I had worn the dress Emily chose, mauve with a ruched waist and sheer shoulders, but it now hung on me like borrowed skin. I didn't bother curling my hair. I didn't touch up my makeup. I didn't smile. I simply sat there through the ceremony like a silent witness at a trial I was never asked to testify in, watching my sister vow eternal love in front of people who didn't know that 2 days ago, she'd ripped the floor out from under me without flinching. The ceremony had been beautiful, I'll admit that. Ryan looked smug but polished. Emily cried at the right moments. The flowers were perfect. The music swelled at the exact second it was supposed to. All the things I'd planned still held. That was the cruel irony. I had built the skeleton of this day, and then watched someone else step inside the body and animate it. After the ceremony, I hovered near the restroom just behind the catering station, too exhausted to brave the reception tent, too heartbroken to sit at a table surrounded by people who thought I was just another friend of the family. A few people passed by, offered half smiles, probably wondering why I was crying quietly into a tissue near the sink. I waved them off, pretended I had something in my eye. Then a soft voice broke through the silence. "You don't belong out here." I turned, startled to see Michelle, our second cousin, 2 years older than me, someone I hadn't spoken to since Grandma's funeral. Her eyes were wide, sincere, and edged with an empathy that made my throat tighten. "I saw what happened," she said. "It was awful. And I couldn't let it slide." I opened my mouth to respond, but she lifted her hand and pulled something small and black from her purse, a handheld microphone, the kind the DJ uses during speeches. "I stole this," she said with a defiant smile. "Well, borrowed." They bumped the maid of honor toast. Sasha fumbled. Said she didn't prepare. "The floor's technically open." I stared at the mic in her hand like it was radioactive. "Michelle, I can't." "Yes, you can." She stepped forward and pressed it into my hand. "Claire, they need to hear you." "She needs to hear you." I wanted to say no. I wanted to shrink back into safety, to avoid the inevitable fallout. But something inside me, something old and tired and full of quiet fury, told me it was time. I had been silent for too long. So I walked back into that tent, my heels clicking against the dance floor with a calmness that surprised even me. The tent was filled with golden string lights, the kind that cast everything in soft, forgiving hues. People were mid-toast, mid-laughter, mid-bite when they noticed me walking toward the DJ booth. The music faded. Conversations quieted. I stepped to the center, raised the mic to my mouth, and spoke before I could change my mind. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," I began, and the room went still. In fact, until about 20 minutes ago, I didn't even know the floor was open. There were a few polite chuckles, mostly from people who didn't realize yet that I wasn't here for levity. My name is Claire, I continued. Some of you know me as Emily's older sister. Some of you might have seen me floating around at vendor meetings, cake tastings, floral consults. Or maybe you didn't see me at all. That's okay. I'm used to that. My voice didn't waver, though my chest was burning. Emily sat at the head table, her fork halfway to her mouth, frozen in place. I wanted to take a moment to talk about love. Not romantic love. Not the kind we place in rings or vows. But the quieter kind. The kind that shows up at 2 a.m. with tea when someone is panicking over a zit. The kind that cancels plans, skips outings, and rearranges life to make someone else's dreams a little easier to reach. I paused, and the room was so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the generator outside the tent. Growing up, Emily was magnetic, vibrant, adored, the kind of person who drew light like a sunflower. And I was always proud to be her sister. I didn't mind staying in to help with homework, or fixing her diorama the night before the fair, or loaning her money I never expected back. I didn't mind because I thought that's what love looked like. Quiet, reliable, unconditional. Emily's eyes were shiny now, her mouth set in a firm line. When she got engaged, she asked me to be her maid of honor. She said she couldn't imagine anyone else standing beside her. And I believed her. A murmur passed through the room, small, surprised, confused. I threw myself into helping her build this day, not because I wanted recognition, but because I wanted to be a part of something beautiful with her. I thought we were rebuilding our bond. I thought I was finally being seen, not just as the planner, the helper, the fixer, but as her sister. As someone who mattered. My hand tightened around the microphone. And 2 days ago, with no warning, no conversation, no reason, I was removed from that role. Gasps rippled, subtle and scattered. Emily's face flushed a deep, sharp red. I was replaced without so much as a phone call. My name was removed from the credits. My contributions repackaged under someone else's name. And when I asked for clarity, I was told to just enjoy the day. As if all I had ever been was ornamental. As if my grief was inconvenient. I turned slightly, my voice softening, but not breaking. It's funny how weddings are supposed to reflect love, honesty, and gratitude, and yet sometimes, the ones who hold you up the longest are never asked to stand beside you at all. Some people looked away. Others stared straight at me, wide-eyed and unmoving. I glanced at Emily once, just once, and saw the guilt swimming behind her tightly composed expression. But I didn't look long. I wasn't here for her tears. I wish Emily and Ryan a lifetime of happiness. I truly do. But I also hope that the people in your life, especially the quiet ones, the steady ones, know that love should be a two-way street. That gratitude isn't something you sprinkle at the end, it's the foundation. I lifted my glass of untouched champagne from the table beside me. So here's to the happy couple, may your love be real, your friends be true, and your memories be accurate. With that, I set the microphone down. Silence held the room like glass, thin, fragile, seconds away from breaking. And then, scattered applause. Hesitant at first, then steady. A few tearful faces. A few stone-still ones. Sasha's jaw was slack. Michelle, across the room, nodded once, slow and proud. Emily didn't move. I didn't wait for her to. I walked out of that tent before dessert was served, before the music could swallow the moment whole, before someone tried to spin it into a misunderstanding or a dramatic outburst. I walked out not because I was bitter, but because, for the first time in years, I knew I didn't belong there anymore. Not because I wasn't enough. But because I was finally enough for myself. Outside, the night air was cool. Sharp. Honest. I slipped into my car, drove past the vineyard gates, and didn't look back. Emily came running after me, they'd tell me later. Sasha looked shaken. A few relatives started whispering immediately. But I wouldn't be there to answer questions or soften the blow. I had already said everything I needed to say. There's a strange kind of silence that follows a public reckoning, one that doesn't descend immediately, but unfurls slowly over the days and weeks that come after, like smoke from a fire you didn't start but finally refused to smother. That silence, at first, felt like exile. For days after the wedding, I braced myself for angry texts, emotional phone calls, or guilt-laced messages from family members demanding explanations or apologies. But instead, what came first was quiet, a ripple of disbelief so thick you could almost feel it seeping through group chats and whispered brunches across the family tree. When the messages finally started arriving, they didn't come from Emily. They came from the sidelines. My cousin Henry was the first. "Hey, I don't know what happened exactly, but your speech. It was something. Brave. Powerful. Just wanted to say I saw you." He was followed by Aunt Carla, Dad's sister, the one who never really took sides. "You have a grace your sister could learn from. Don't let anyone dim that." Then came the others, some vague, some tiptoeing, a few thinly veiled attempts to coax gossip without asking directly. But every one of them reinforced what I already knew: the truth had cracked something wide open. The wedding had become a story, an unofficial family myth already retold with hushed voices and conflicting versions. Some painted me as a woman scorned, others as a heroine who finally stood up. And in a strange twist of fate, Sasha's reputation took the most immediate hit. Her role as the sudden replacement, followed by a public fumble, made her the easiest scapegoat. Emily didn't text until 5 days later. "You humiliated me. You ruined my wedding. I hope it was worth it." I stared at the message for a long time, not because I didn't expect it, but because I wasn't sure how it still hurt. I thought I'd said everything I needed to say. But those words, that cold reversal of accountability, still landed like a stone. I didn't respond. The next message came a week later. Then another 2 days after that. The tone shifted, less anger, more uncertainty. "Can we talk? I wasn't trying to erase you. I miss you. Please." But I was already somewhere else, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I had booked a solo trip to Oregon on a whim, something I never would have done before. I didn't even tell anyone I was going. I just packed a bag, threw my camera into the side pocket, and boarded a flight to Portland. I rented a car and drove down the coast, stopping at little towns with bookstores and cafes and cliffs that made me feel small in a way that didn't hurt. I walked barefoot on Cannon Beach. I photographed fog rolling over the waves. I sat in silence and listened to my own breathing. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt present. I stayed in Oregon for 10 days. I slept late. I didn't answer emails. I journaled until my hand cramped. And when I returned, I didn't go back to the Claire I had been. That version of me, the one who overextended, who bent until she broke, who gave love like a faucet always turned on, was no longer in charge. I restructured my business. I hired a part-time assistant. I raised my rates. I started choosing clients who respected boundaries. I learned to say no without apology. I also started doing something I never made time for before, living for myself. I signed up for a photography class on Sundays, where I met people who didn't care about my family history or how responsible I was. They just liked the way I saw the world through a lens. I reconnected with Nicole, an old college friend who reminded me what real, mutual friendship felt like. We met for wine and music, for long walks through the city and slow evenings full of laughter. She never asked for anything but my presence, and that, to me, was revolutionary. One afternoon, about 5 months after the wedding, I came home to find a note tucked under my door. Emily's handwriting. I recognized it instantly. I didn't know how else to say this. I was wrong. About all of it. About you. I let someone get into my head and made choices I can't take back. I miss you. Please, if you can, let me come by. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to say it face to face. Part of me wanted to crumple the letter, to shield the peace I had finally created from the chaos she represented. But another part, the one still soft, still hopeful, knew that if she had truly come to terms with herself, she wouldn't be seeking validation. She would be seeking understanding. So I told her she could come by. One time. She arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, eyes red but makeup carefully applied, wearing a coat that didn't quite fit the weather. She stepped inside like she wasn't sure whether she was allowed to. I didn't hug her. I just gestured to the couch. For the first few minutes, she sat in silence, twisting a napkin in her lap. "I owe you more than an apology," she finally said. "I owe you the truth." I listened without interrupting, something I'd done 1,000 times before, but this time, I wasn't doing it to absorb her pain. I was doing it to finally let it pass through me. She told me she had been jealous for years, of my stability, my focus, the way people quietly leaned on me. She said Sasha made her feel seen in a different way, but that she let it cloud her judgment. She admitted that she knew what she did was cruel but didn't know how to stop it once it started. "I thought if I kept Sasha happy, everything would fall into place," she said. "But I didn't realize I was losing the only person who ever showed up without needing to be asked." There were tears. Her voice cracked. Her hands trembled. I nodded, but I didn't cry. "I forgive you," I said. "But I'm not ready to go back to what we had." She nodded slowly, accepting it, maybe even expecting it. "That's fair," she whispered. "More than fair." We talked for an hour. Then I walked her to the door, and she left. I didn't promise anything. I didn't offer a path back to closeness. But I also didn't slam the door. And that was enough. 2 months later, I stood beside another bride, but this time, as a maid of honor to someone who had chosen me not out of obligation or convenience, but out of admiration. Her name was Elise, a client-turned-friend, who said my presence in her life had reminded her that calmness didn't mean absence, and steadiness didn't mean invisibility. The ceremony was small. Intimate. Every detail reflected Elise's gentle nature and grounded joy. As I stood beside her, holding her bouquet while she exchanged vows, I felt something click into place, not the desperate hunger to be seen, but a quiet pride that came from knowing I had rebuilt myself piece by piece, not to prove my worth to anyone else, but to finally see it for myself. During the reception, Elise made a toast. She called me her anchor. Her secret weapon. Her greatest friend. This time, I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because I was whole. And I had made myself that way. If you like this story, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell to not miss the release of the next exciting stories.